Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving right into the raw, brutal, and totally elemental origins of the Norse cosmos. If you're used to those gentle, peaceful creation stories, well, you might want to buckle up, because today we are leaving the sanitized pop culture versions far, far behind us.
The Norse universe wasn't peacefully created. It was built from a corpse and a cosmic flood of blood. Now, when we usually think of creation myths, we kind of picture a divine being calmly speaking the universe into existence, or maybe peacefully sculpting life from clay. But the medieval Icelandic sources, like the Poetic and Prose Eddas, they paint a drastically different picture. The Viking Age worldview was forged in a harsh, unforgiving environment, and their Genesis story reflects exactly that. It's violent, it's visceral, and honestly, it's absolutely fascinating.
Section 1. Fire, Ice, and the Void, the primordial extremes of the Norse cosmos.
Okay, let's set the scene at the absolute beginning. We're talking before there was even an earth to walk on or a sky to look up at. At the very dawn of time, there was only this massive, yawning abyss known as Ginnungagap. And this void, it was sandwiched between two absolute extremes. Up in the north, you have Niflheim. Think ultimate freezing inertia. It's dark, it's misty, packed with glaciers, and flowing with these venomous, icy rivers called the Eilivagra. Then, down in the south, you have Muspelheim. This is a place of blazing heat, blinding light, and just raw, destructive energy, all guarded by the fire giant Surtur. So the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that the Norse universe starts with tension. It's ultimate venomous cold clashing with ultimate uncontrollable heat.
Section 2. Enter the first gods. Life emerges from the melting ice.
So, over time, those venomous icy rivers from Niflheim flowed out into the void and literally froze into towering mountains of rime. But then, sparks and heat from Muspelheim started drifting in. When that raw, southern heat finally struck the northern ice, it actually began to melt. And from these thawing drops, the very first living being was formed. Ymir. But listen, Ymir wasn't some carefully crafted being made by a loving god. No, he was a primordial giant, a super dangerous force of nature born directly from these chaotic elements. And as Ymir slept, he began to sweat. Get this, from the sweat of his armpits, a man and a woman emerged. And from his legs, a six-headed son was born. I mean, wow, this is the bizarre, deeply chaotic origin of the entire race of frost giants.
Now, alongside Ymir, that melting ice produced another being, the cosmic cow, Autumnla. And Autumnla actually fed Ymir with 4 literal streams of milk flowing from her udders, providing this pure elemental nourishment. But you might be wondering, what on earth did the cow eat? Well, for 3 days, she licked blocks of salty ice. And as she licked, she gradually uncovered the form of a man, trapped right there in the rime ice. She freed Buri, the very first god. Buri eventually had a son named Bor, who married a giantess named Bestla. And then Bor and Bestla gave birth to 3 brothers you've probably heard of, Odin, Vili, and Ve. So these 3 brothers are half god and half giant. They're literally the ultimate embodiment of divine order mixing with primordial chaos.
Section 3. The Cosmic Murder. Order requires destruction.
So, it brings us to a huge question. How do you actually build order from absolute chaos? Odin, Vili, and Ve looked around this yawning void, and what did they see? They saw Ymir, this massive, unpredictable force of nature, and his frost giants multiplying at a super alarming rate. The young gods quickly realized that as long as Ymir was around, a stable world was completely impossible. To build a new world, the old chaotic forces absolutely had to be destroyed.
And this leads us to a staggering, truly dynamic event. Odin and his brothers actually attack and slaughter the primordial giant Ymir. But this is definitely not a clean victory. A catastrophic flood of blood pours from Ymir's immense body. I mean, it's so massive that it drowns almost the entire ancient race of frost giants. Only one giant, Bergelmar, and his wife actually managed to escape the deluge. So this cosmic flood effectively functions as the very first apocalypse. It's a destruction of the old world that brutally, but necessarily, clears the space for the gods to construct a brand new one.
Section 4. Anatomy of a Universe. Crafting the world from Ym's remains.
Now, what the gods do next is brilliantly macabre. They drag Ymir's colossal corpse right into the dead center of Ginnungagap, and they systematically construct our physical universe from his body parts. It's like a giant puzzle.
They take his flesh and pack it together to form the earth and the land masses. His blood becomes the vast seas, lakes, and rivers. They shatter his bones and teeth to create the mountains, rocks, and boulders. His hair is planted to grow into forests and vegetation. Then, they literally take his massive skull and hoist it up to form the dome of the sky, assigning 4 dwarves named North, South, East, and West to hold it up at the corners. And finally, for the finishing touch, they toss his brains into the air to become the drifting clouds. It's wild, right? A gruesome corpse entirely transformed into this deeply satisfying cosmic architecture.
And absolutely no part of the primordial world was wasted. To bring light to their brand new sky, the gods captured flying sparks from the fiery realm of Muspelheim, setting them up as stationary stars or placing them on chariots to become the sun and moon. On the other hand, and this is wild, they took Ymir's eyebrows and used them to physically build a massive protective wall around the central realm they created, which they named Midgard. Think about that. They literally used the giant's own facial hair to wall off their new creation from the surviving giants who lived out on the outer fringes.
Section 5, The First Humans. Life from driftwood on the cosmic shore.
So, with the universe neatly structured and Midgard securely walled off, the story moves down to the shores of that vast blood ocean. Odin, Vili, and Ve are just walking along the beach when they discover 2 lifeless pieces of driftwood. And right then, they decide to populate their new, protected world. Each brother gives a specific, really profound gift to this wood to create the very first humans, Ask and Embla. Odin grants them the spark of life and breath. Vili gives them mind's understanding and human emotion, and Ve grants them their physical form, the power of speech, and the senses. It's amazing when you think about it. Humanity itself is repurposed from humble driftwood, given the exact tools we needed to live, multiply, and care for Midgard.
Section 6, A World Born of Chaos, the theological message of the Norse creation myth.
So, what does this all mean? Why does all this matter, and what should you take away from this? Well, the Norse cosmos perfectly reflects a culture built on intense struggle. Order, in the Viking worldview, is only ever achieved by violently repurposing earlier destruction. Survival in historical Scandinavia was a constant daily fight against freezing winters, dark oceans, and harsh elemental forces, so their mythology mirrors their reality perfectly. Civilization and safety, they are definitely not the default state of the universe. Instead, they are hard-won, temporary victories carved out of a fundamentally hostile environment.
If the universe is built from a corpse and surrounded by a fragile wall, how long until the chaos breaks back in? See, the people who told these stories knew that walls eventually crumble. They knew those surviving giants were always out there, just waiting in the dark. Midgard's existence was incredibly fragile. This bloody, totally chaotic creation story actually sets the perfect stage for the inevitable end of the Norse world, Ragnarök. The chaos that was suppressed at the beginning of time is destined to return. Which really just leaves you wondering, how fiercely would you live, and how hard would you fight for your world if you knew from the very beginning that it was built on borrowed time?